Afternoon, we will bring this regular council meeting to order for May the 9th. And we will begin with a land acknowledgement. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kenai, Piikani, Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on. We'll move into the agenda 2.1. Are there any additions or deletions, CEO Becker? No? Councillor Harrison or Councillor Heisted?
Yeah,
Harrison.
Councillor Harrison, he'll be back tomorrow. Actually, I just want to add Centennial Park for discussion.
Okay, where would you like to put that, CEO Becker, under maybe 4.4?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, could I please have someone make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Mayor Barkley, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. All in favor? And we'll just go over the minutes from the regular council meeting of April 25th. If everyone's okay with that, please make a motion to accept.
I'll move those minutes, Mayor Barkley.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. All in favor? Okay, and then the agenda priorities meeting of May the 2nd.
Mayor Barkley, I would move those minutes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wing. All in favor? Perfect, thank you. Okay, moving into 4.1, a request for a decision on the CAO report.
Thanks, Mayor Barkley. Hello, Council. Just a few items for Council consideration. The report is there for your review. I did report on the hydrogen conference that I attended last week during the A&P meeting. Just want to highlight training that Director Vickers and I took recently, completed it regarding social procurement. Something it's I remember when council, before the budget, council made a priority to look at procurement as an agenda item or a priority, which kind of led into this training. Really interesting training. Social procurement in the training that we took relates to adding social value to existing purchases through procurement from both public and private sectors. You can do so by adjusting purchasing criteria, providing weighting within RFPs, RFQs, also the evaluation of bids as with a focus and lens through social, cultural, and our environmental goals. And also the opportunity to focus on community capital by focusing in on employment through your procurement processes. Just really a quick snippet of the training, but what I recommend to council is to, if you're interested in learn more about what social procurement is, how it can be applied into our current operations, I would have council then direct administration bring back a social procurement specialist to have this conversation, determine if you're interested in advancing this process. It's not just adjusting your procurement policy to align it up with social. It's actually it's a mindset. It's actually a lengthy process, probably a couple of years to build in the mindset to move procurement through a social lens. So I did talk to consultants last week, the one that actually did our training for us, and they're certainly interested. Come before council informally for a conversation. If you just give me a nod of support to do that, I certainly would bring that in. I'd strongly recommend the council has that engagement. And just to highlight the emergency management training, emergency management is very important for us. Recently, staff took integrated incident command systems 200 training here in Innisfail on April 25th, 26th. The report indicates what ICS 200 is. It's one couple pieces within the training processes for incident command systems, as well as we also have had a training on direct Deputy Director of Emergency Management Training recently as well. So there is some focus on training. The next step, I believe, is tabletop exercise, and then hopefully we won't have to exercise the training at any given time, but certainly be prepared is very important. And that's my report, Council. If there's any questions on this or anything else, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Mayor Barkley through to CAO Becker. I was just wondering if you could remind us who Creation Communities are.
Yeah, Councilor Barkley to Councilor or Mayor Barkley to Councilor Mazzeros. It's Creation Communities. It's the Bella Vista subdivision. Yeah.
Okay, if nothing else, I'll have somebody please make a motion that we accept this report as information.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maceras. All in favor? Okay, and CO Becker, I'm going to make a motion that we recommend you bring forward a social procurement consultant to speak to council about the philosophy. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, thank you. And we will move into 4.2, discussion item with Councillor Heistad on graffiti.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I did talk to CEO Becker just briefly on this item. I think it was late last week. Just noticing a lot, a number of areas that are tagged in town, and maybe there's ways that we can work through our policing committee and looking at our bylaws to help those business owners clean up that graffiti in town. There's a number of places that I've identified. One of them would be just that little walkway through the back way. It's the new and used store, as well as I think Lilac and Lace, or not Lilac and Lace, the I can't remember the name offhand, that other the store right in that little alley. Yeah, you got it. And so it kind of comes in waves, graffiti in the community, and I know that the town has done a good job in the past trying to clean it up through the bylaw, but I think there's an opportunity through maybe the facade program that we have with our businesses, and maybe utilizing that program to help to offset some costs that they may incur to clean it up. And I want to just bring it up as discussion. I think a lot of this has to deal with our I think utilizing our policing committee survey this past week that was just finalized, and working with our policing committee, it allows us to, our eyes and ears are on the road, and how do we help those businesses that are kind of looking rough around the edges? That's what I want to bring up as discussion. No motion made, nothing like that, just more FYI, and wanted to bring it to your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a graffiti? We have a graffiti bylaw policy in place?
Mayor Barkley, there's a reference of graffiti within our community standards bylaw. I do know there is a graffiti policy associated with graffiti removal kit distribution. From the conversation with Councillor Heistad and just this morning, trying to get prepared for the meeting, policy was approved in 2012. And what it does is outlines the distribution of graffiti removal kits to businesses, owners, and residents. And it's basically on request. A kit is, they're housed at the fire department. So yeah, I asked for a kit to be dropped off at the office. I want to see what's in them. And certainly we could tie that back into the committee, which meets next week.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bates?
I'll just comment, connected to the facade programs for several years, and I don't think like it's specific to a renovation. And I would not like to see the two mixed at this point, but that's just my comment.
Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I've been thinking about this from a few perspectives, but I wonder about implementing a bit of a social marketing strategy in the community where we talk to our businesses and we talk to our residents in an exploratory way, but also in an opportunity to engage them around some of these kinds of behaviors. And so I would say to you, lots of people don't know that if they have graffiti on their property, that it's their responsibility. It's easy to delve into policies or throw it up on Facebook if you're curious, if you don't know. But I wonder if there just isn't an opportunity to make people more aware. Now, we've talked about the whole graffiti issue not that long ago, and it's like, what about businesses that sell paint bombs or whatever? But I just think that there's more of a, maybe in working through our policing community or committee, that there's not more of an opportunity to just engage the larger community around what some of these issues are, whether it's litter, whether it's graffiti, whether it's panhandling, and we're going to talk about that one in a minute too. But I just don't think enough people know, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to start talking about some of these things with the community at large. Thank you.
Well, maybe down the road, we should look up at putting a graffiti wall for people to do their graffiti on. Right? That's what lots of other communities do, but I don't know that you'll ever be rid of this, but anyway, we can, Councillor Hystad.
Yeah, Your Worship. And the only reason why I brought up the facade program, I look at the Century Theatre right now. If you look at the back end and then the sides, it's a very large building, and to cover that up, it's going to cost a lot of money for the owner. And that's the only reason why I brought up the facade piece to it. And that's where, like maybe a graffiti wall, there's, we've been talking about murals and community art in the community. I think there's an opportunity through policing committee to have that conversation. So that was my intent today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maceros.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. To Councillor Hystad, I'm getting the idea that you're kind of wanting to figure out a way of whoever's the target of the graffiti, so that the burden is not on them to have to pay to have it cleaned up. If there could be some kind of a combination of programming that we do to help kind of mitigate the costs to them. And I like that idea in theory. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we will move on to item number 4.3, the council action control. Councillor Bates.
Yes, through to staff. I was just wondering if we'd heard anything yet about CP grants.
Councillor Bates, no, I was going to provide just a little verbal. We haven't heard back yet from them in regards to any invoicing on that crossing yet. We keep being told it'll be the end of the month. A month goes by, so still waiting.
Okay, thank you. I just noticed with interest in the news that they're having some difficulties with trespassing Calgary, and they're handing out, the CP police were handing out $600 tickets. So I think it just makes me feel good that we did that, because it was an impossible situation. And yeah, I'll look forward to an update when it happens.
Next month. So if there's no further questions with this, I'll please have someone make a motion to accept this as information.
I'll move that, Mayor Barkley.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bates. All in favor? Perfect, thank you. And then we'll go to item 4.4, Centennial Park with Councillor Hystad.
Yeah, and this is another item just for discussion. I think this item's been, in one way or another brought up in the last couple months. I do think with the Centennial Park, there's issues with garbage, there's issues with people not obeying the traffic laws. and numerous offenses. And I know it's a huge undertaking for our bylaw and the RCMP. I know that we received an email this past weekend from a citizen that has some concerns down in that area and speed. And, I want to, see if we can have a little bit of a discussion on where everybody else is at. I'm not passing any motion itself, but I do see that area is a concern. And how do we tackle it with our policing committee as well, seeing that we've, similar to the graffiti discussion, we just completed that survey from the citizens. So for me, I find, living close by in that area, very tiring to see, some of the similar ongoings for the last little while. And I understand the work that's gone in to our community, trying to make it a lot safer. So that's it. Thank you.
I would personally say I've seen a lot less garbage in the lot, and it ebbs and flows. I mean, I'm going there for years, and sometimes it's not great, but sometimes it's just great. So, the question is, email came late Friday evening from a resident and in that area with some concerns, of course. So what do we do? We've been talking about this for 3 years now, 4 years, and keep having the same issues over and over. And I'm not going to get into, well, there's a bunch of kids in the parking lot and they're hanging around. I mean, kids are kids, and I was young once. But I think whether it's noise issues or people burning donuts in the parking lot or speeding, whatever, we have options. We'll get a gate. We can close that park off, and it's 2022, so you can have technology. It opens and closes that gate without people having to be there to do it. And there's lots of parks that will actually close off the park at nighttime. I mean, I don't see any other way that you're going to stop issues at 2 o'clock in the morning without that parking lot being closed off. That the only thing that's going to happen is somebody's going to make a phone call, and it's going to be reactionary all the time. And the other thing is that, to have, I guess, our CPOs, our CMP, they were doing some speed setups last year down in there. And, let's hear back from whoever we have to hear of this, I guess, Manager Leith, about, give us a readout on the speed sign that's there. It's been there for quite a while now. So what are the speeds going up and down that hill when the sign is on and when the sign is off, because it tracks both of them. And let's get some data so that we can make the right decision, because without having the data in front of us and having the feedback from Manager Leith and the RCMP, then it's difficult to make the right decision. And ultimately the decisions with council to make. I mean, the police committee can be involved, but the decision is actually ultimately here to decide what we need to do with that area to fix things. So, Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I'm curious about the playground zone. So while I appreciate playground zone hours for traffic are daytime, the speeding is an issue down there 24 hours a day. So if I look at 50th Street and then along 60th Avenue, that area that borders Centennial Park, where does the playground zone actually start and where does it end? And does that entire section on the street and the avenue there's no playground zone there?
Correct.
So we have a playground, we have playground equipment, but we don't have a playground zone on the road? What's right there though?
It's Mayor Barkley, if I may, Councillor Wing, there was looking at the Traffic Safety Act, it doesn't necessarily meet the requirements of the legislation. You can still designate any zone playground zone, but it's not. Council looked at that, and the legislation indicates it's outside that distancing to actually be in a playground legally, but you can still dedicate it as a playground zone if council desires.
And I guess my comment would be, if you're not doing the enforcement, I don't care whether the speed's 30, 40 or 20, right? Because at 2 o'clock in the morning, if somebody's speeding, they're going to be speeding. So how do we, I think we all know kind of not to speed when you get to Penhold, and there's a reason for that, right? Because there was consistent enforcement there time and time again. And, do we need to do that here in order to fix some of these problems down in this area? So I think CO Becker, if you could maybe get some information to us and so we can understand totally what's going on down there.
Sure, just tying on the operations side. So besides information coming from the citizens, there's also admitting there are some challenges on the operations and enforcement side. Indication of speeding, and the data will dictate on that sign that we place. So that data will be pulled. That tells you the time of day and the amount of kilometers each vehicle. So each vehicle is tracked. Even if the light is not on, it's still being tracked. So that data is coming. I guess my question to council would be, do you want this information to be filtered through the Policing and Safe Communities Committee, or do you want this coming directly to council?
Well, actually, I'll pick on Cindy for a moment, Councillor.
Sure.
Rose.
I think probably, I'm not sure what the right protocol is, but maybe whoever would see it sooner.
Councillor Hystad.
Well, I see it as a collaboration with, administration, council and policing committee, looking out for the best interests of the community. As to the letter that came in this past week, it also talked about 60th Avenue and the speeds that people drive. And I think there's 3 crosswalks there. So you have, there isn't a playground zone, but I think for us to get the data and actually make a better decision, a lot more communities like Sylvan Lake or the city of Edmonton are looking at 40-kilometer speed limits to, deter the speeding as much as you can, which sometimes you can or cannot, but it makes it safer if you're going to get hit, to be honest. And that's the truth. So I think, it's an opportunity for our committee to work closely with administration and council. So that's how I'm seeing it.
Councillor Bates.
Well, just listening to the discussion, so we're kind of going all over the place. With respect to the garbage, I walk there frequently and I think that's fairly much under control. It comes and goes and you will still get somebody that's going to dump something. That's just going to happen. The speeding and the specific letter that I saw was on the street, not in the parking lot and in the park. It was on the streets. And I think we have that problem all over town. It seems like it got aggravated with COVID and people wanting to just give it their vehicle when they get free. And you have it on Lakewood, you have it on most of the streets that aren't right around the houses. It seems like to me, I hear it 3 or 4 places in my neighborhood. So I think that's something that the police committee should perhaps look at, and then it'll come back to us about enforcement as to what degree of enforcement we're willing to pay for. And yeah, so those are my comments that way. And as far as the speed limit that Councillor Hystad just mentioned, I do feel we talked about it last council too, and it was mixed. I do feel that most of our residential could be reduced, but unfortunately, probably some of those arteries we're just talking about would still have most of them would still be 50, I would think. And I do have the experience of Cochrane, where I go often to my extended family, and they went all the way to 30, which is ridiculously slow throughout the entire town, unless otherwise posted. And so you got to study it. You got to decide what's right, and then and not just on a whim. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really important to get the data, because we are at 50 in residential, and are people speeding? Are we just hearing about one area? There's other areas. We've heard before about 42nd Street. And so I don't know how much we can direct and say, we want enforcement to happen. And it's probably not our job here. I don't know, but I think it's our CPOs that would be doing that enforcement. Is that correct, CO Becker, or maybe in conjunction with the RCMP?
Yeah, with both Mayor Barkley, it'd be through CPO senior. We have one level 1 CPO, and then of course our CMP. So I do know which committee will hear. We are moving into our summer schedule. I think this coming weekend, which means that we'll be working more on Saturdays as well with the CPOs. So I think if council doesn't mind, as per Councilor Mazzaro's comment, is the committee meets again on the 19th. I'd recommend that defer both graffiti and the Centennial Park discussion to the committee for in-depth review the data with any recommendations coming back to council for consideration.
Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley, through to CEO Becker. And mirroring what Councillor Bates mentioned is I've had several people approach me not only about the Centennial Park area, but the road, the school zone right in front of the historical village there. I've had a number of people talk to me about picking up their kids and about how trucks just go barreling through there. And a lot of them have mentioned that, you know, they're standing still and they obviously don't have a radar gun or anything, but they said it's pretty obvious to tell when people are speeding through that area. So I know that there's a lot of concerns from the citizens, and I've mentioned to anybody that approaches me to do the same as the other citizen did, where to submit a letter and correspondence so it can get in front of us. But as long as we're having this discussion, I think it's important to realize that there are a lot of other areas in town. I know that we live beside a playground zone or a park zone, and I've watched people go barreling through there, young people smoking away and on cell phones and just, you know, well, everybody, I mean, it's all over the place. So I look forward to seeing some data.
Yeah, and I would also encourage anybody that you speak with, have them call. Like if they see incidents going on, I know people are reluctant to do that, but the more calls that can come in, they start to build the file and they start to get descriptions of vehicles, and it's very, very helpful. So Councillor Hystad.
I want to thank everybody for the conversation today, because I think it's sometimes having you don't have to make a decision right now. You can think about it, give some thought, and think it through, you know, the next couple of weeks or however long we're going to make it. But I appreciate the opportunity to freewheel. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to 5.1 operational services and an RFD for the aquatic recreation complex architect selection.
Thanks, Mayor Barkley. So apologize for not getting this into the package. We actually just met with the final interview on Friday, so a little late getting it in. So yeah, purpose here is to make a recommendation for award of the architect for the recreation architect, or sorry, it should be aquatic center. So the request for proposals went out, closed on April 22nd, where we received 3 consultants submitting proposals. Group 2 architecture teamed up with also Shape Architect, HCMA architecture, as well as ACI architecture. The scores were based out of a possible 670 points. Just a brief review of the stages that we did for the evaluation. Stage 1 was a review to determine that the proposals complied with all the mandatory requirements. Stage 2 consisted of a review of any conflicts of interest, rational or financial interest disclosures. Stage 3 consisted of a review of each proposal, which was 3 members of that team. Stage 4 was the interview process, where we actually interviewed all 3 submissions. At the conclusion of the interviews, 40% of the scores from the stage 3 submission review and 60% was ranked for the interview process. From the submissions, all were done very well, very professional. All firms are more than adequately qualified to complete this project. But it is administration's recommendation proceed with group 2 architecture, as it did score the highest overall of the 3. So it is our recommendation to award the contract for architecture to group 2 architecture. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Director Kennedy. Just have somebody make the recommended motion and then I have a question.
Oh,
Okay,
I'll move the recommended action.
okay, thank you, Councillor Bates. So question, you know, we've evaluated based on points. I know there was $600,000 set aside for going into this process. Like how does the financial part work, Director Kennedy?
So the financial component it's very complex.
Okay.
It isn't based on what we would pay them. We don't evaluate that based on that. What they submitted, part of their submission was a percentage of how to billing it works. So that becomes a very minor component in the evaluation. It's more focused on the team, their experience. That's what really gets the ranking. So we did evaluate though. We went through the evaluation, got overall scoring, and then we actually pulled the financial component out and then also looked at it that way as well. Both ways, group 2 did still score the highest in the process.
So that they have, group 2 has a lot of experience with this process and have worked on it before. And
yeah, of the 3 submissions, they have the most experience
great.
In the process, as well as very well versed in aquatics as well. So we're very confident, I believe, in selecting them in the program.
Great. Well, I believe that they did the library here at the Library and Learning Center back in the day. So yeah. Any other questions?
Mayor
Councillor
Barclay, through to
Maceras.
Director Kennedy. I was wondering how many proposals would you typically expect on an RFP like this?
This is fairly new to me, based on conversations with Ken, our advisor. It is the 3 to 5 is pretty typical, especially when we are being specific to having experience with the IPD process.
Okay.
So this is probably what the expectation was.
And then when you have a scoring, a possible number of points, do you have a baseline that you kind of won't go below for proposals?
Baseline to go below. No, we do overall scoring, and then really we go to, yeah, if we were to have top 3, that's what we would use.
Okay.
Councillor Hystad.
Yeah, it was group 2 that we used a number of years ago for the library, but I trust your judgment on this one with the points and scoring, and I'm assuming it's some of that fit too, that synergy in the meeting as well. I would assume when you grade them as well.
Yeah,
Isn't that?
I definitely think we took a lot of topics and threw at them. It definitely does come down to, yeah, it's the individuals that come to the interview, as well as how they were able to explain the process. But it wasn't all about IPD. We did score them on their pool experience as well. So that was a high rank as well. So
Thanks.
Any further questions? No? Okay, all in favor then of the recommended motion? Okay, carried. Great, thank you. Thank you for your work on that, Director Kennedy. And we'll move into 6.1, request for decision on energy policy with Director Vickers.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. So I am bringing the energy policy for approval today. The town of Innisfail is committed to achieving environmental sustainability and strives to reduce the energy consumption and ecological footprint of the organization. The town's commitment to energy is echoed in both Innisfail's community economic development strategy, which is one of the core functions is environmental leadership, and the draft 2022 to 25 strategic plan, which respecting our environment, focusing on Innisfail's energy sector while being good stewards of our natural environment is a priority. At the May 2nd Agenda and Priorities Committee meeting, Council was provided a draft energy policy for information and review. Today, I'm seeking approval for the attached energy policy to support the town's energy commitments. Thank you. I'll have take any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Could I please have someone make the recommended motion, then we can have discussion?
I'll move that council approves the 2022-05 energy policy.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maceras. Questions? Councillor Bates.
Well, I do have one. So as I look at this, I see it as an extension of our strategic plan values. And when I look at the itemized initiatives 1 through 12, they all make sense. I can't see anything in there that we wouldn't want to do. The only concern I have is that, so this is like a resolution. The only concern I have is that down the road, somebody might look at a situation and say, well, that fits our energy policy, so let's do it, without due diligence as to the payback or the importance of that initiative relative to another project. That's one concern I have, that we would start to categorize and say, I guess we have that control, both in what comes to us as a proposal and us approving it. But that's just I'm putting it out there that anything that we still do needs to get its due diligence is what I feel.
I'm assuming that you would still bring the projects back to council for approval, even though we have an energy policy.
Absolutely, Mayor Barclay. They will
to be
always
budgeted.
come
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
either through budget discussions or through a formal resolution. Absolutely.
No, good point. Anything else? Okay, then I would ask for everybody in favor of this, please. Okay, carried. Thank you. And we will now move into 7.1, a request for decision on the town chamber MOU with Manager Gordon Shaw. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So today you have before you a report that details a memorandum of understanding between the town and the Chamber of Commerce. So what we're asking for today is for approval in principle with respect to this MOU as an outcome for this particular meeting. Where this comes from is a particular tactic for our community economic development strategy that was approved by council a short time ago. And within that strategy, it was identified to have a relationship with the chamber and to have a formal means of collaboration with them. So what this MOU does is basically set out the responsibilities between the two parties as to who would do what and when. And so we're asking today for your formal approval in principle to be able to begin work with the chamber in terms of putting this together and having that formal relationship identified and recognized through it. So that's the purpose for the report that is before you today.
Right. Thank you. Could I please have someone make a motion and then we can have some discussion?
Mayor Barclay will make that motion that council approves in principle a memorandum of understanding between the Innisfail and District Chamber of Commerce and the town of Innisfail, and directs administration to continue discussion with the chamber to complete it.
Okay. Thank you. So discussion. I guess I'll throw a discussion point out there. Under collaboration, collaborating with the chamber and organizing a series of business networking events and provide chamber with proceeds, etc. So at our recent community economic development meeting, it was mentioned that the chamber had networking events coming up in May. And I'm wondering if there's been any collaboration with the town on those and any kind of organization to that.
We have not had any follow-up since the ECDEV meeting on the 28th with respect to those networking events. If council proceeds with this, this motion on the table today, we will move forward with commencing some of those discussions. One of the additions that the Community Economic Development Committee had was around setting up sort of a more formal meeting schedule between town administration, economic development committee members, and the chamber board itself. So if, again, we'll start moving forward with those, whether it's evolves to be sort of a bi-weekly type of meeting where we're just having more connection and more open communication between the town and the chamber.
Okay. Councillor Wing.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Barkley. So I have first a comment and then I have a question. The chamber board meets this Wednesday. The chamber board has not seen this document. It is going to be discussed at the meeting. It's on the agenda, but they did not receive a copy of this document in advance. So from a process perspective, I don't understand why we would approve in principle a memorandum of understanding before the other party has had an opportunity to look at it, to consider it, and then think about whether there's changes. I mean, if we approve it and then it needs to come back to be amended again or again and again, I'm just wondering if we would not table this now at this time and then wait for the chamber board to give them the consideration of seeing and absorbing what this document means.
I guess the idea being is that the Community Economic Development Group is a committee of town council. So they make a recommendation back to council. So the motion made from the committee was to recommend the MOU as it was presented back to council to ensure town council is comfortable with the document. Then based on this motion, it would be provided to the chamber for the consideration of the board. Again, the CED committee also includes the representation of the chamber president and economic director or executive director as well.
So if we adopt, so if we made changes to this, it would go back to the CED committee and not like I don't understand. I guess I don't understand the formal relationship between the CED committee and council from this perspective. But yeah, I'm as an appointed member to the chamber board, the fact that we have not had an opportunity to discuss this while the governing body in our community is making a decision of this nature, it doesn't feel like we're doing it in the right order.
I guess, go ahead. Todd.
Yeah, if I may, Mayor Barkley to Councillor Wang, so not knowing when the chamber meets. So the committee is an advisory group to council. So through discussion with the chamber, they've had a chance at the executive level, I suppose, maybe not the committee executive, but the chair as the executive director have reviewed it, positive feedback. So the committee is advising council to consider this MOU in principle. So it means it's not being adopted. You're not adopting it today. You're saying, hey, you're on the right track. And so please release it to the chamber for review, whether it's Wednesday or next week or 2 weeks. It's really up to the chamber to decide how you want to review this document. But it is a respect to the chamber to say, hey, the committee's looked at this. You've had some play in this. Council thinks it's on its way, but could change a bit. But now it's going to the chamber saying, here's a draft, here's some principle, looking for feedback to come back to council for final approval.
Councillor Hystad.
Seeing that we're in open debate, my question would be to Councillor Wing is, would you be comfortable with this wording as is going back to your meeting? I understand where you're coming from on the structure side. I do, but when CEO Becker explains, the intentions of it, kind of it actually the flow can work, but I just want to make sure that you're okay where you're, in your leadership role to the chamber.
Well, I guess until I hear what the chamber has to say about it. So when I go to the chamber meeting with my council hat on, yes, I'm supportive of this. I don't think we've crossed all the T's and dotted the I's as council relative to the conversations we've had in the past relative to our relationship with the chamber moving forward. But if the collective wisdom of this group say, yeah, well, this should get people to the table the way we need them to be, then I, I can live with that. But I will tell you, I'm concerned going to the chamber meeting on Wednesday, taking this to them to say, council's approved it. Or, yeah, approved in principle. So that's just where I'm feeling a little conflicted. I like the content of it. It's just the relationship piece of it that's concerning for me.
But I think, Councillor Wing, going back to the chamber with what CEO Becker said, we're approving it in principle, and now it's going to the chamber and we want their feedback, and then we will make final approval at some point in time. So I think this is just kind of opening that dialogue process, if I understand this correctly, CEO Becker.
It is Councillor Leon, Councillor Wing as well. If there's items in this MOU or the content, looking for that feedback, and maybe today isn't the right day to approve it in principle. But if council has feedback on changes, I think this is the now and maybe an AMP meeting to further review it, but looking for council's feedback on this MOU and its content.
Councillor Hystad.
Yeah, Councillor Wing, I would agree with the relationship piece, and if you made a motion to table, I would second that. So.
Mayor Barkley, thank you. Being part of the ACTEV committee, for me, I feel that the recommended motion actually captures what we're trying to do, is that it is just approving the principle, and that we're directing administration to continue the discussions with the chamber. So there's going to be a bit of back and forth. Having had the opportunity to be a part and read this, I'm very comfortable. And I also think that it lays out some accountability within what we've discussed previously about our relationship with the chamber. So to me, I'm very comfortable with it as it is, and I look forward to finding out what the chamber comes back with and where we end up landing. But right now, as it stands, I'm very comfortable with how it reads.
Councillor Bates.
As I read the motion, the way it's written, I think I can come on board in the sense that it does specifically say that we're approving in principle, which I think I heard Councillor Wing say the content she felt comfortable with, as long as we feel that we're not pushing this to the chamber to say, because the finish line is continue discussions with the chamber to complete it. So that, to me, lots of times in major, this is kind of a major thing, and lots of times in major things, somebody has to put it out there and say, okay, let's discuss this. And I think that this captures a good starting point, and I can be a part of approving this the way it is, I think.
Councillor Maceros.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I'm wondering if Councillor Wing, would you be more comfortable if it said that council approves in principle a draft memorandum of understanding?
No, I think actually, Councillor Mazeros, thank you for that. I think I would be more comfortable if the motion just stopped at saying we approve in principle the memorandum of agreement between the chamber and the town, and end it there for now. I don't feel comfortable directing administration to continue discussions yet, because we haven't heard from the chamber. I thought that council had agreed we would maybe elevate some of these conversations a little bit higher. So just handing it back to administration to continue the discussions, maybe until we hear back from the chamber. I would feel more comfortable if we left it at that. Just say, let's approve it in principle, send it to the chamber. It's on their agenda for Wednesday, and then we can bring it back to council immediately after that. So perhaps administration is to continue, not to continue discussions with the chamber to complete it, but administration to work with the chamber to bring the next report or the next iteration or the chamber feedback back to council.
CEO Becker.
Mayor Barkley, Councillor Wing, I'm just for clarity, so administration would not be engaging with the chamber to communicate council's direction today. Typically, that's what our role would be. So once you give direction, administration takes that direction to, and what I'd see to be more specific, if council approves this motion, Director Jenkins or Manager Shaw would engage with the management of the chamber and say, council has approved in principle, here's the content, looking for to engage with the chamber to review the document for further detail and negotiation perhaps. But that'd be a task administration typically would do. So I just want to make sure the expectation of council is constant with all the other actions administration takes on behalf of you.
Here, Barclay, I have a question. How does it get delivered to the chamber for them to discuss? Is that through this directs administration to continue discussions with chamber?
Member Acting Councilor Mazeros, any action council gives, you're making a policy, basically. Once you make policy, it's in the hands of administration. That's, you're tasking me with this motion ultimately, and I'm delegating accordingly. So I'd recommend you maintain administration to implement your policy as per typical. You know, if there's other tactics to best represent council with the dialogue, certainly, but administration needs to be at play on this policy item.
So just to ask, so Councillor Wing, like you're concerned about the last part and
I guess my overall concern is the timing. If we pass this motion, we direct administration to continue discussions with the chamber. The chamber board is meeting in 2 days. So I doubt that you're going to have time to, that work between administration and the chamber likely won't happen in 2 days. So I guess, you know, I understand how these things are operationalized. That's not an issue. I understand that completely, but I'm just worried about a conflicting time schedule and that the chamber will look at something as being, the town is giving us, this is the town's direction to us, and we haven't had that. And without that conversation first, I just don't know that that's a great process relative to the relationship. But if you're feeling that the board chair and the executive director are comfortable with this and are sure the board will be on board with it, then I guess we just have to know that the board will have, the chamber will have that discussion with their board on Wednesday without the further context. That's all.
I guess my question would be, my understanding is once this is done, if we move forward with this today, then tomorrow, this would be delivered to the chamber, correct?
Correct. So,
Okay.
so the chamber has the CED committee members have the original draft of the MOU. Factor 5 made a couple of adjustments based on the conversation from the committee, which was largely around coming up with sort of a mechanism. There was a lot of conversation about sort of the difference between council and the chamber board, that the chamber board is a more operational functioning body, and how we tie that board in with administration, as opposed to keeping everything at that high strategic level, because that's not necessarily where the chamber board is playing all of the time. So I can appreciate your sort of who goes first, but it likely wouldn't be appropriate for the ECDev committee to have sent this MOU directly to the chamber either. So it comes up to you. There's certainly not an expectation that the chambers needs to adopt this at their Wednesday meeting. You know, the ECDev committee just met the week before last, and now it's come to council, so.
But I guess like you will have time to discuss with the chamber tomorrow.
Mhm.
The
Yeah, or
MOU.
we will
so-
pass it on based on council's motion today. This is the draft MOU that has come out of the committee.
Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Wing?
I mean, I have to be, but I
Don't
guess
have to
just
be.
from the chamber board,
Don't have to
as a
be.
chamber board member, to get a document like this a day before a board meeting, if there's going to be an expectation that the board adopt it at that time, that would be, I don't believe that gives them time for due diligence.
I guess that would be an expectation the board would be putting on themselves, not an expectation that we are placing on them that they have this adopted this week.
It's fine, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Megan mentioned also that our consultant indicated that the MOU represents council's power of place strat plan, but also represents the chamber strategy that's worked both strategies into this MOU. I've not seen that strategy, but that's the communication that came back to the CED committee. Okay.
Councillor Hystad.
Yeah, it's good discussion about process, that's for sure. I guess how long, if we pass this today, how long do you expect the chamber CEO Becker to get back to you and the ECDEV? Is it
There's
kind
really
of,
no timeline, Councillor High said, it's straight up to the chamber to understand on their side if it meets their vision and how they wish to proceed. If not, they can communicate that back. So it's really when they're comfortable to see the benefit of this MOU. We hope that the chamber will respond saying this is a benefit to our community. We'd like to execute this or something close to this. But there's no timeline that's been established with council's resolution.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the table. Everyone in favor? Opposed? No, all carried. Okay, thank you. And we will move on to 7.2, an RFD for the Energy Futures Lab with Director Jenkins. Thank you, Manager Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. So another action item coming out of the Community Economic Development Committee. So the Community Economic Development Committee has recommended that council consider participation as the host community for the 2023 Energy Futures Lab Roadshow through an expression of interest. So the Energy Futures Lab last week at ANP, council had an overview of the Energy Futures Lab and what this roadshow could look like. So hosting an energy related event or conference is an action identified within the ECDEV strategy. And this expression of interest will provide us with further information and expectations that would be required of the community if we were to be the successful host of the roadshow. So looking for a motion today from council to submit that expression of interest to the Energy Futures Lab.
Okay, thank you, Director Jenkins. Can I please have someone make that motion?
Mayor Barkley, I'm happy to make that motion that council directs administration to submit an expression of interest to the Energy Futures Lab to host the 2023 Energy Futures Roadshow.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. Any questions? Councillor Bates.
Just from my part, I would hope that we'll get some fairly solid information that we don't have right now, including the potential costs and the expectations of our community. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to make the decision, that we won't have a, well, we've got to decide in the next, 2 or 3 days, because depending on what we get, it would be nice to have a little bit of breathing time but we certainly, I'm certainly interested in moving ahead. So the expression of interest is great.
Okay, thank you. Even wonder, CEO Becker, if there's an opportunity, Director Jenkins, if there's an opportunity for EFL to do a presentation to council in an AMP meeting at some point in time, so all of council kind of understands the scope of EFL and what they do, but just a thought. Okay, any further discussion? No? Okay, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And then we have an RFD for the Southwest Industrial Park subdivision with Director Jenkins.
All right, so you have a plan, hard copy in front of you showing the potential layout, but we're looking to present the proposed subdivision and pricing for town-owned lots within the Southwest Industrial Park intended for public sale. So the Southwest Industrial area consists of 2 titled parcels totaling approximately 123 acres. The subdivision will result in 46 acres of saleable industrial land, the SRD emergency surge pond, public utility lots, the remainder of the town yard, environmental reserve and municipal reserve along Buffalo Creek, and just under 6 acres will be dedicated as road. So administration is requesting direction to submit a subdivision application for consideration by the subdivision authority. As well, we are looking for direction to set the price per acre for the lands and commence widespread marketing. The proposed pricing for the sale of the lot reflects the projected costs of servicing the property, applicable offsite levies, and the remediation costs that were a part of the reclamation of the wastewater lagoons. The price is proposed to be an introductory rate that would be increased later in the year to encourage front-end sales. Servicing of the land is intended to take place in the fall of 2022, with purchasers taking possession in the spring of 2023. So we're looking for 2 motions from council. One for the introductory pricing of $160,000 an acre. And then the second motion to submit the subdivision application in general accordance with the plan that's in front of you.
Okay, thank you, Director Jenkins. Could I please have someone make the first motion? Councillor Hystad.
I'll make the first one. The council sets the introductory price of land for sale with the Southwest Industrial Park at $160,000 per acre until July 29th, 2022 for spring 2023 transfer.
Okay, thank you. So I have some questions. Do you think July 29 is long enough? I'm just thinking, Director Jenkins, we know how long some of these discussions take with potential purchasers. You know, it's a large investment. So, and if it's not 160, then what is it? And are we committed to sticking to July 29th at that date? Because if we don't, and we say, well, we're extending it, that kind of gives a little bit of an indication that maybe things aren't going as well as we'd hope potentially. So I worry about that. My second question would be, like, if a contract is entered into before the subdivision application is approved and done, like, are we able to take deposits on purchase agreements when the subdivision's not done? And where do they go? Like, do they go into our lawyer's trust account? And just curious how all that works.
Yeah, so ideally, you know, we went with the July 29th, or I picked that date because August 1st is a Sunday or something. Gives us sort of time, creates a bit of a sense of urgency. You know, we have had a number of conversations, but, you know, may sort of get people to that point of actually entering into a purchase agreement itself, where yes, we would take a deposit and it would be held in trust with the lawyer, with possession not until the spring. I think trying to push those sales in the summer here and getting going will give us a lot more certainty, you know, as we move into the installation of the services in the fall, knowing that, you know, we have half a dozen lots that are already sold.
Yep, no, fair enough. And with the subdivision process, like, how long does that take?
So the subdivision process takes about 60 days.
Okay.
So we'd submit the application, referrals are sent out to any adjacent property owners, and including, you know, everybody, Fortis, TELUS, Alberta Transportation, all of those other stakeholders, and then a report would come back to MPC for the approval. Typically, that's a conditional approval that has a few things that we would then need to meet prior to being able to register the subdivision at land titles.
Okay, and then for my 100th question.
No.
So, like, when we do the subdivision and you've got the lot set out, I'm assuming once that's done, it's done, right? Once those lots are serviced, they're as is. So we have a 10-acre parcel, but somebody comes along and they need a 2-acre, and
which is part of the value of the early lot price. If we can get as many people nailed down. If, you know, if they only want 2 acres, we can adjust all of those boundaries. Boundaries can be adjusted later. It just means another process.
But the
Um,
servicing would be.
Yeah,
in
the
place,
servicing
right,
where
is-
they're gonna
yeah.
be stubbed in,
Yeah.
ideally, the more we know on this front end and the better. So if we can push this marketing, get as much, you know, nailed down lots as we can prior to finalizing that subdivision, is gonna be better.
And
for
would that
those.
servicing be in Director Kennedy, like in September likely, or?
Goal is to get it in. The goal is to service the property based on the tentative layout or the subdivision plan that we're having. So obviously, yeah, if we do get somebody interested later in the fact, that there
Yeah.
would be some added servicing cost.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Okay, no, great, thank you. Councillor Bates.
Yeah, the only point I'll make is, I guess it's a question, but I'll kind of give the answer. It's an assumption in my part. Obviously, once we proceed with this, the servicing has to go ahead. And so our default for funding the servicing is the borrowing bylaw that we've already directed you folks to pursue. And obviously, we hope to get some revenue right away, but just so we all understand that's our default, that we do have to do it once we're starting to sell them. Thank you.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the table. I will ask who's in favor. Okay, carried. And then have somebody please make the second motion.
Make that motion, Mayor Barkley, that council directs administration to submit a subdivision application for the creation of industrial parcels in general accordance with the attached plan.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maceros. Any discussion, questions? All in favor? Right, thank you, carried. Okay, next 8.1, we have a request for decision on the community standards bylaw with CPO Radatsky.
Hey, Derek, could you also introduce Zach too?
Absolutely, everybody. This is our bylaw officer. That's for 3 weeks now, 2 weeks. So he's been spending a lot of time just taking everything in. Had the opportunity of taking him down to the Municipal Enforcement Association conference a couple of weeks back, where we took an unsightly properties course. So he's seen firsthand how other municipalities deal with it, and he's bringing his insight knowledge, and we're really happy to have him, and he's been a valuable asset already so far to the team. So welcome.
That's
Thank you
great.
very much.
Oh, welcome, Zach.
Okay, Mayor Barkley, Zach is here for a short period of time. He's filling in kind of spring, summer, into early fall, and then he's off to other things, but he's here to learn and to be exposed, but also is a reallocation of some of our summer students' resources to pull in support on the bylaw side.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Hear me okay? Oh, perfect. There we go. Yeah, well, your worship, members of council, members of administration, thank you for having me. Filling in for Gary, who could not be here today, so he sends his regards. We're here for the draft of the 2022 community standards bylaw. I know that it had been previously spoken to in council, and then likewise with the agendas and priorities committee. So before you is copy of the draft, has been reviewed and compiled by myself, other individuals within the municipality giving feedback, and then worked on with lawyers. Includes combination of our nuisance bylaw and then our community standards bylaw to make one more concise document, bringing into more alignment with similar municipalities and drawing on from their learned issues and feeding back some of the things that we haven't updated or changed or amalgamated, or things including loitering, harassment, including new versions of the definition, the addition of the definitions for noxious weeds versus nuisance weeds, similar to a Weed Control Act, the changing of statutory holidays to be consistent with the town of Innisfail's policies and procedures, unoccupied properties to deal with more of the properties that we have in town that become more of an issue, construction maintenance with snow, provisions for exceptions for said procedures with schools, hospitals, you name it. And then also areas of large unscaled and development properties with respect to grass, development permits for work and maintenance on vehicles within residential parcels, for example, and then steps to take for properties that continue to become a nuisance, continue to become unsightly, provisions to take into consideration of that. And then other sections for panhandling, updated fines and fee schedules. And then so all those things to try to make a better bylaw that we can use that are more functional. Some of the things that were brought up before as far as symbols of hate and so on, and you can see the comments that were made by our lawyers and ways that we can try to combat that, but also within ways that the individuals are allowed to express their opinions. So with that, you have had the bylaw in front of you, and I'm open to any questions at this point.
Okay, thank you. Derek, maybe we'll have someone make first reading, and then we can open it up for discussion.
Mayor Barkley, recommended motion, the council accepts and gives community service standards bylaw 1683-2022 first reading.
Okay, thank you. And we'll open up for discussion and questions. I'm going to ask a question about the appendix, the fees in the appendix. Does that require something separate to change those, or it's part of this? Because I know we talked about littering, Councillor Hystad, and I thought we had talked about maybe upping that fine.
Yeah. CEO Becker, you want to go first?
I'll go first. I think Derek's prepared to respond to the question, Mayor Barkley. Following a administrative review, I think Derek can respond. If not, I can fill in the blanks regarding any increases to the fines.
Sure, your worship, we did review the current schedule, reviewing several municipalities, bringing up some of them and bringing them more consistent with across legislation. We reviewed numerous municipalities in the area and found that those fines, based on what we find, are rather consistent with the standards. Yeah.
If I could.
Do we want to be like other municipalities? Do we have to be?
No, Mayor Barkley, you don't have to be at all. The idea was in administrative conversation was where do you want the time to be spent? So the fines, we might want to make them that people will pay the fine, because if not, they don't pay the fine, then Derek's going to court. So the higher the fine and the more that don't pay, then Derek's not here. So that's kind of the balance we're trying to.
If I could speak to experiences in that, if the fines get too high, individuals are more likely to invest the time to plead not guilty, lawyer fees, time delays. If the fine is too low, well, then it's not a deterrent. But if it's somewhere in between, it can they're willing to pay for it, but they're also in the back of their mind, it's that monetary deterrent to comply.
Thank you for that, Councillor Heist.
Yeah, your worship, and thanks for bringing that up. And I can understand where our bylaw enforcement is, trying to have that balance. I guess the big thing for myself, living in the community and seeing stuff, I really think I can live with this, the numbers that are presented to us. The thing that I really see is, we're going to see increased traffic in Centennial Park, Dodds Lake and that. And I think the big thing for us is the signage and making sure people are aware of what those fines are. If we're going to do that and do a great job by law enforcement in its entirety, I can live with this. At the end of the day, I get where you're coming from, eating up your time and legal times, legal fees for not only us, but both sides. But I think signage is key to a lot of the work that we're going to do. And so thanks for giving us that.
If I could just speak to that, your worship, through to Councillor Hystad. This is just one piece of our legislation. The Traffic Safety Act, for example, being another one. So when we get those complaints of vehicles doing donuts or causing noise in the parking lot, we can get those information off the camera. Some of those fines can be stunting charge, for example, is almost $700. So there's other, this is one tool in the toolbox that allows us to hit certain things that we can use, and we can also use the other ones to our use.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. So I wanted to start off by saying I fully support community standards bylaws. I appreciate that they provide a description of what acceptable behavior looks like in our community. They provide our peace officers with tools that they may need in dealing with circumstances and situations. So this is a huge bylaw, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, because it brings with it the sometimes the controversy and the lack of consensus, but not a willingness to not vote in favor of the bylaw because it's a big bylaw. So I just wanted to say this. A few weeks ago, when the amendments for this bylaw were first presented, I asked, what problem are we trying to solve by inserting a section on panhandling? Is this a real and current issue in Innisfail, or are we trying to be proactive by including it? And do we not already cover off unacceptable behavior in the disruptive public behavior section of the bylaw without identifying panhandling? So I just wanted to offer these thoughts in person because I wasn't here. I was doing it online before, and I just wanted to be able to just say this to you all right now. Behaviors such as panhandling, urinating in public, defecating, loitering, hoarding, all are examples of undesirable behaviors, but they're often also symptoms of other issues such as poverty, homelessness, mental health, and addictions that are not often best dealt with by the police and justice systems. So as we've heard and we know, our courts and justice systems are crammed full. I'm not sure that it makes sense to hand out tickets that result in fines to people who have no capacity to pay. We send them along to the next level of government or of justice. Panhandling itself is not illegal in Canada, but it's fairly safe that somebody that's ticketed for panhandling is not going to challenge their ticket in court, and they just won't pay. So it ends up costing our own municipal system money to enforce. An example would be the city of Penticton that decided to aggressively enforce their bylaw. They had one individual who had a number of tickets that he refused to pay, total of $145, cost the city $30,000 in legal fees, and then they suspended their legal action. They didn't recover any of it. So should panhandling, should those other behaviors that I'd mentioned earlier, if they are truly a true issue in this community, I think our interagency group and our policing committee should take a look at understanding what some of the supports and programs for people that are involved in that kind of behavior would be. But I just, like I said, I can't not support the bylaw, but I just wanted to be able to just say in person, those are my concerns about considering panhandling itself specifically to be an illegal action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, Derek, maybe you could.
Would you like? Sorry,
Well, I would say maybe tell us a little bit about the process, because I mean, we know there's some, mental health issues in the community. And
so speaking from my experience, it hasn't been a large issue within the town of Innisfail. That's not to say, I think it was added. We did draw on a lot of items from the city of Red Deer. Recognizing the fact that things are changing, and unfortunately, again, it's another tool. I think it's nice to have, but with that being said, we've dealt with a variety of individuals with mental health issues, addiction, homelessness, and our first line of work has always been help. We've personally been able through the assistance of family and community service, been able to help people to get the services that they need. Issuing tickets would definitely not be one of the first things we always take into compassion and our discretion, and it's just a tool that is the potential to have in case of a situation where you have an individual that potentially could be that we would make that determination that for whatever reason we felt it appropriate, but certainly we would not be trying to penalize somebody that's already had such an unfortunate situation as a mental disorder. Yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Hystad.
Your worship, to Councillor Wing, with panhandling in 60, I think it's section 64. Is that something that you want, you asked that the policing committee to take a look at it? Is that something that you want out of the the recommendation right now, or just, it's just, you're giving us advice to work on this? Because I think Office CPO Radatsky is giving us some good insight of with the work he's doing in the community.
Totally. I agree. And I appreciate having that. I appreciate having that context as well. I think that this particular bylaw as a whole is something that there are a number of organizations in our community that should be aware of it, because ultimately at the end of the day, we want our citizens to be successful. And so if we're aware of where the danger zones are relative to behavior or these kinds of bylaws, it's important that our agencies understand that. As I said earlier, it's important that our peace officers have the tools. And so if they need to get somebody into a safer situation, and the best they can come up with at 3 a.m. is that they ask them for $20, I get it. I totally get it. But I think as we become, as we look for solutions, and that we try to be forward thinking, and that we are a compassionate community, I just think that I don't want to take note. I honestly don't think it would be one that would be often enforced, simply because of the language that we have in it relative to hours and places and all of that stuff. But I think it's an important conversation. And the other piece is, when we take bylaws and policies from other communities, we don't always have the context of why they exist there. So how long did it take Red Deer to get their community standards? 20 years. And they have a street team from social agencies that cruise around the streets in downtown Red Deer every single night. So again, context, right? But I think we just need to make our agencies aware that these are some of the behaviors that we have agreed through this bylaw are not acceptable in Innisfail. And public urination and defecation. How many public bathrooms do we have available in our community at 2 o'clock in the morning? So that's all. Thanks.
Would you like, Councillor Wing, at some point in time, maybe a, I don't know, presentation or more information about what happens with, the process, I guess, if someone with mental health issues is taken in and they're referred to FCSS, or Karen gets involved in Sandy, and then how that works with all the interagency groups that they deal with?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I think we asked that question a few months ago when we had been told that a camp had been taken down. And the question was like, so what happened to the people that were living in the camp? And so, yes, I think the context around how does this community respond when we have difficult issues like that to deal with would be very helpful. Thank you.
So I know we have a motion on the table right now, CEO Becker, but once we get through this, do you want a motion to direct administration to get that information to us in the
Yes,
future?
please.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're in first reading right now of this bylaw. So everyone in favor? And can I please have someone give second reading?
Mayor Barkley, I'm prepared to give second reading.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just make the comment too, that I think we should have as many things in the bylaw as we can to give them the tools, because as I look back, previous experience, we all of a sudden say, oh, we don't have a bylaw to cover that. And then we start asking administration to review the bylaw. So I think having that stuff in there, and it's all about how we choose to administer it. Thank you.
Kind of went through that last term, didn't we? A little bit. Okay, all in favor of the second reading? Perfect. Okay, please have someone give consideration for third reading. Councillor Wing.
Mayor Barkley, I would move that council give consideration for community standards bylaw 1683-2022 third reading.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? And then we'll have someone give third and final reading, please.
Mayor Barkley, I'll give third and final reading to Community Standards Bylaw 1683-2022.
Okay, perfect. Any final discussion? No? Okay, all in favor? Great, carried. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move into correspondence.
Remember, I
See you
forget,
there.
as per
Oh,
Councillor
I'm
Rainey's,
sorry. Yes, of course. See, short memory. So we'll have then a motion then to be made that we direct administration to bring back further information on I guess mental health issues in the community and the processes that are in place.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I would make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? No, okay, all in favor then? Perfect, thank you. Okay, we will move into correspondence. So the first one, or second one, I guess, number 2, Docks Rock Day, May 19th. If we would like to proclaim that as World Family Doctor Day, and we may, if council wishes, maybe get something to take to the medical clinic to show our appreciation, whether it's cupcakes or something like that, but can do that next week. So if anybody would like to make that motion to make May 19th the proclamation of World Family Doctor Day.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hystad. All in favor? And maybe just a consensus, would you like us to get something to drop off at the clinic? Yeah, okay, okay. I'll look after this. Okay. Okay, next, Discovery Wildlife Park is looking for a letter of support for their application to Travel Alberta for some funding. So some exciting stuff happening out there for later this year, the Light the Night. So I would need someone to please make a motion that we provide Discovery Wildlife Park with a letter of support for their tourism funding.
I'll make that motion, Mayor Barkley.
Thank you, Councillor Maceras. Everybody's got their hands up already. But
I'll make a comment. If,
Okay,
if
all
that
right.
gives you breathing time. So I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but some of the buildings that they've added there recently was to actually store they intend to make this a big deal, and it'll line up very much with a lot of the things we're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, and in fact, I know further on, I think you wanted to wait till it greened up a little bit, but we're going to have a council tour at Discovery Wildlife Park, and Doug will show us everything that's going on and all the exciting things that he's got coming up this winter. So, okay, so we have a motion. All in favor? Okay, thank you. And the Innisfail Healthcare Center Hospital Auxiliary. Do you need a motion for that, or is that done since it's on Thursday?
No, we would need a
Motion,
motion
okay.
to waive the costs, just for council's information. The strawberry tea didn't occur in 2020 or 2021, but the fees have been waived by council in years prior for this group. Just for council's awareness, so it's a 4-hour booking, I think, so it's $267 is the booking cost.
Thank you, Director Jenkins. So could I please have someone make a motion? Can you make that motion into the microphone, please?
I'll make that motion. I beat Councillor Bates.
So that the motion is to waive the fee for the community room. Okay, all in favor? If anybody's around this Thursday between, I think it's 2 to 4. Is it, Director Jenkins? I have it on my phone, but
I know the booking's from 11 to 4.
yeah, I think
so
it
I'm not
begins
sure
at,
what
I
time
think
the
it
tea
begins at
itself
2.
is.
Yeah, so great to drop in on that if you can. Then we have a email from Mr. Vandervelden with respect to dog park. You know, being a dog park user, I have heard this feedback a little bit from people some time to time that are up there, and it's a bit of a struggle to get there. I'm not suggesting we build a new dog park, but I'm wondering if administration could look at any opportunity, especially maybe in the summertime, of parking up at the east end, like you'd have to come through the cemetery and where the snow dump is in the winter time, if there would be any opportunity to potentially have some parking in there, and even, I mean, we would need to take a look at budget and costs, but putting even a gate in at the east end of the park where people could drive a lot closer and walk on flat ground and into that area, but it is quite a hike up the hill for some people without question. See, Rebecca?
Yeah,
I know, I just thought I'd throw that at you.
yeah, no, it'd be, due to the significance of that'd be a project.
Yeah.
So it'd be a motion, please, to direct administration to come back, to explore parking, additional parking at the existing dog park. Because it does still take some evaluation and some time.
Yeah. Councillor
Mayor
Wayne,
Barkley, I would make that motion, please.
Councillor Heisler.
Just my comment is, I find it interesting. It's kind of the discussion that we're having at Age Friendly with a lot of the, individuals in our community that may not have access to certain parks and areas in our community. So it's very fitting. So thanks for the suggestion.
Okay, so we'll see that on action control. Sorry. Poor CEO Becker. What's that? Yeah, I know. I was just making that comment. Sorry. Okay, so all in favor of the motion? Okay. Okay, and then seniors and housing information. So it's a proclamation to declare Seniors Week, June 6th to 12th. If somebody would like to make that, please.
Mayor Barkley, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. Are you keeping up, Kara? Okay. No, keeping up. She might be giving up too. First 2 hours Monday morning, I probably ruined for her, but then we have the Summer Municipal Leaders Caucus, Alberta municipalities on June 14th. So I believe Kara sent a calendar invite out for that today. So please respond to that ASAP and she can get people registered. So what?
Yeah,
Yes.
just to be the June 22nd, likely Mayor Barkley and Didsbury. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I had asked Kara to send an invite out for that. Did I say 14th? Or did I? I'm sorry, I meant 22nd. Yeah. Okay, so I will please have someone make a motion that we accept the correspondence as information.
Mayor Barkley, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. All in favor? Then we have, we'll do our round table next, and we are starting today with Councillor Maceras.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. It was a good week last week. Attended the MPC meeting, and shortly after that went to help flip burgers for the Emergency Preparedness Week barbecue. Attended the Day Dental Business meeting. I went to the Climate Change and Emerging Threat to Community Safety webinar, and that was super interesting. I'm wondering kind of what the next steps for kind of the learning that took place in that webinar would be, where that might go to. Yeah, that was my week last week. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. As well, on Tuesday, I attended the Emergency Preparedness Week barbecue and was able to flip burgers with a few of you and chat with some of our citizens, which was a really nice time. On Thursday, May 5th, I didn't attend it as a counselor, but I was part of a symposium put on by the Employment Partnership. Or sorry, it was the Employee Partnership Symposium put on by Employment Placement and Support Services in Red Deer. And it was all around the view on disabled workers in Alberta, in particular Central Alberta. I was able to attend a couple of breakout sessions, and one in particular really stood out for me, and it was put on by Brandy Heather, and it was called Diversity and Inclusion. Well, she's a diversity and inclusion specialist. And it all was around principles of inclusion, breaking down attitudinal barriers, and just our social responsibility around accessibility. I would like to perhaps have a little discussion with council about bringing Brandy in, or suggest that Brandy come and speak to council administration so we can have a better understanding on a very underutilized portion of the labor market, and understanding going forward what it could look like for people with handicaps with disabilities to be more part of our community and placements. So if there's an opportunity, I'd definitely like for us to decide if we could maybe bring her in. It would be very important, just from a different lens, as we are part of all, the Economic Development Committee and what we're talking about in our community. And the one thing that I haven't seen is any of us speak to that portion of the labor market.
So do you think, Councillor Dunham, maybe we could make it even broader than council and bring somebody in like that as community presentation? So involve the chamber, involve business community, and so, to kind of educate others. But Councillor Maceros, you have your light on? No, okay, sorry. So what would you like to do with that? Do you want a motion for that, Todd, or just kind of say, let's look into this, or bring some information back?
It's really in the hands of council what your expectations are, but any action would be associated with the motion, just so you're sort of clarity.
Okay.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah,
Do you want
I'd like to make a motion that we approach Brandy Heather and other social organizations within the community to come and present to us, so we have a better understanding of accessibility.
And would you like that present here or a larger event?
I think it would be nice to see the large events, a place like the community space at the library.
Okay. Perfect. Good with that? They're gritting their teeth. More work. Okay, sounds great. Thanks for that. And any discussion? Have a motion? All in favor? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I also attended the MPC last Tuesday afternoon. On Wednesday, I participated in the Parkland Regional Library Strategic Planning follow-up meeting. That strategic plan is just about ready, and I think it's going to be very interesting. Had the opportunity to attend the tour of the new Day Dental building. An amazing facility. They gained themselves a new patient as a result of that tour. I represented Councillor Harrison at the Parkland Foundation board meeting on Thursday morning. Certainly lovely to hear about what's happening in our new facility. Once the restrictions have totally gone away, council will be invited. Well, they haven't even had their grand opening yet, so we will be invited to have a tour and participate in the grand opening. It's also very troubling to hear about how ongoing restrictions are keeping our seniors confined to that building. So staff is working hard to always try and find ways to keep people's spirits up and keep families satisfied that their loved ones are being cared for. And I was asked to share my thanks from administration to our staff for their assistance and services in getting that meeting set up, so that they were very appreciative of that. Toured the 52 North manufacturing operations on Thursday, and then the next day, the grand opening of the new lounge salon. My notes say saloon, but it's a salon and spa. There's just amazing things going on in this little town, I'll tell you. It's pretty exciting. Tomorrow, Megan and I are meeting with the chamber to talk about the market on Main, and then the chamber board meets on Wednesday, as I've said before. And then cleaning up with the Green and Clean Challenge this week. And I think council's working hard on Thursday together. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks.
So I'm just going to ask a question about the market on Main, and if you know what's happening with that.
We do not. So we've just been invited to, my understanding from the email is that the chamber is considering moving relocating the market on Main to the parking lot at the Henday Mall. But as I said, that's all we know. So I don't know why. I don't know what the purpose or what the goals are by making or considering that move. So we'll have that meeting tomorrow, and then, as I said, the chamber board meets the very next day. So
Okay,
Please, go ahead.
Um, I guess I just want to ensure, and I know you will take this message forward to Councillor Wing, that, you know, when we went through the 13 ways in engagement and Doug and Heather engaged with the community, it wasn't just with council, but with a broad community, that, you know, the overarching thoughts that came out in that document were creating downtown vibrancy. And, you know, part of that was a market on Main. I think that vision also came from our visit to Rocky Mountain House a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, and seeing 1,000 people out at the market on Main that night. I think leasing a portion of the lot at the corner of 49th or 50th and 50th was also kind of embedded in that vision, and having tents up and picnic tables and music. And, you know, certainly last year, whenever there was kind of more activity and music, there were certainly more people that came to the market. You know, the twinkle lights went up, and so I mean, I don't know what the rest of council thinks, but I guess, you know, I'm hoping that that message will get through, that we've started to build this. And, you know, maybe it hasn't got as big as we were hoping, but COVID always hit as well. And so I'm kind of disappointed if that would be moving back to a parking lot at the mall. I don't know, does anybody else have any comments?
I would second that, Mayor Barkley. I think there's something magical about having it on Main Street. There's an atmosphere that we would lose by moving it to a mall parking lot.
Thank you, Councillor Heistan.
Yeah, no, I do agree with the comment that Councillor Maceros has said, and your words as well. I think that it goes back to, and Councillor Wing, those relationships that we do have with the chamber and how we communicate with that. So I think I'm excited about, you know, potentially with you know, if we have a stage and we're able to encourage music, and I think that will create a buzz for our downtown community.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I guess lacking an understanding of really what the vision is for this new market and its location. I thought it was, you know, bearing the numbers, very successful where it was. I think that there is a ton of potential for it to stay on Main Street. And it, as you mentioned, it really fits to what the vision was supposed to be about, a downtown revitalization. So I'm disappointed that if it does move, and hopefully we'll have a better understanding of what the rationale behind its move is.
Councillor Bates.
I too would like to know what the rationale is, because we have made, well, a lot of staff investment time. I mean, it's not that it's ongoing if they're running it, but and the leasing of that lot, etc. I'd like to know what the rationale is. Thank you.
I'm also wondering, Councillor Wing, if you could ask as well, like, have the vendors been approached and what their thoughts are about moving it? Because when does the market start? Is it not, I think, beginning of June, is it not?
Well, they haven't, to the best of my knowledge, and I was away, but at the meeting that I attended just before I went on holidays, they still hadn't announced dates because they didn't have large demand. So we're still waiting on those. As far as I know, we're still waiting on those dates. I haven't seen anything in this meeting package that gives a date.
The June 21st had been mentioned
June
at the
21st?
CED meeting, but that was before the conversation about the relocation, or that wasn't part of that.
And the arena market, Director
The arena
Jenkins?
market starts next, the 19th is the first one for the arena market.
Okay.
And I believe that was in the Friday chamber email she sent out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councillor Wing? No. Okay. Councillor Bates.
So I too attended MPC last week and the Protective Services Barbecue. Also went to the 52 North visit, and again, to see a company that you aren't familiar with and all the things they do, it's amazing. One of the most innovative things that they're doing is a complete recycling operation of hydrovac trucks, and that has huge potential, I think, in this province. Also through personal connection, had the pleasure of actually yesterday attending Joy's School of Dance. Every year they do a festival on their own. It wasn't a competition. It's just everything they do in their school. And there was like 70 odd performances. They do it at the Red Deer College, and on that stage, it's just amazing to see what they do. And they did, I believe, last week have a full-on competition where they placed extremely well with many of their performances. This week I have Regional Water Commission meeting, and Thursday looking kind of busy with, if it's still scheduled, the Sean Collins, and I think a quick date with the seniors, and then Green and Clean. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hystad. I didn't forget you this time.
That's okay. Thank you. No, last week I was at the Day Dental. It was emergency barbecue for, I think it was just an hour. And then I apologize. I missed the historical village meeting that on the 4th. So I sent an email to Anna just apologizing that I'd like to touch base with her. And no, it's always a busy week on council, but a lot of good things. All I can say, that Day Dental building's beautiful. Like, it's going to be here for 200 years. It's really cool, at least. So thanks.
Maybe in 200 years, we won't have cavities anymore or something. You never know. So last week attended the emergency preparedness barbecue, as well as some business visits, including 52 North, Day Dental, of course. Went to the lounge on Salon on Main Street, Gina Marshall's new saloon, new place. She's done just a beautiful job of renovating the old previous Freeman Insurance building, and it's bright and sunny in there, and it's really nice. And just to give ITT a little plug, I know some of us have been to the play over the last couple of weeks, and it was absolutely excellent. Went on Friday. I believe Saturday was sold out, and I know that this is the last week. So if anybody has time and hasn't been there, I would highly recommend going. And we're very fortunate to have such a wonderful theater group in this town. And this week, publics have a RCMP Zoom with Public Service Canada, and it's about retroactive pay for the RCMP. Also, just a minute, just reading this stuff here. The Sean Collins on Thursday, and the Innisfail drop-in presentation on Thursday at noon. Hospital auxiliary tea, the Green and Clean Challenge, and have a meeting with Mayor Ken Johnson and Mayor Mike Yarjo on Friday. It's around discussions around the Red Deer Regional Hospital and some of the issues that are taking place there, and some of the spillover that may be impacting the community here. So kind of looking at getting some information and sharing some things and taking that further into kind of more of a larger Central Alberta Mayor's Group, and just to have some discussions around that. So busy week ahead. And I think that's that open mic session. Is there anyone online who would like to, has any questions? Any comments? Okay, perfect. Okay, then we will go into upcoming events. We'll just have somebody make a motion that we accept this as information.
Mayor Barclay will make that motion.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Bates.
Yeah,
My
one
head there.
question. I was talking to Kara, and she said you would be speaking to the event of the 17th.
RDP.
What is it?
RDP, Polytechnic. Yeah, we're going to do that.
No, just the 17th, and on local government fiscal framework.
Okay,
Can someone tell me what that is?
Yeah, so in Alberta municipalities in the e-newsletter that comes out every week. If there was a link in there that this next week, there's a discussion on the local government fiscal framework that we should be tuned into if we can. So Kara, I asked Kara to send an invite out to people. If you can make it, great. If not, that's okay, understandable. But it's around, of course, Spring Caucus, it was brought up, and of course, they're changing the local government fiscal framework. So MSI, as we knew it, and Alberta Municipalities is doing a presentation on it. They would like municipalities' input and feedback. There was some discussion at Spring Caucus about it. And so I think it might be interesting to see where things are at. They were looking at all sorts of parameters to include in trying to calculate what the new fiscal framework would be. And they were asking about feedback from communities.
So is that in here as a Zoom?
Yeah, but we can do it in here as a Zoom, can we?
As long as there isn't MPC.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll push accept on my little phone. Thank you.
Only problem with here, of course, is asking questions. Don't have access to that, but. Okay, and then I guess we will have a motion, please, to go in camera.
Mayor Barclay, I would make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wing. All in favor? Thank you.